Hey everyone out there, how's it going? Welcome to Screen Speak. It's the podcast that's all about movies, life, and so much more. My name is Jordan Anderson, and I'm the creator, the producer, the writer, the host. Pretty much everything on this podcast is ran by myself, and you're listening to it. So I thank you so very much for doing that. Sincerely, thank you so much for coming by and giving this podcast a listen. It really does mean everything to me. Plug time. Go ahead and hit that follow button. Hit the bell. Get on social media, check out Instagram on there. There's a Facebook group. Check out both those. Likewise, follow them, take part in the community, talk to people, talk to me for that matter if you want to. I do answer your questions if you ever do submit them. And for that matter, if you ever do just have anything that you would like to share with me outside of social media, feel free to email the podcast, screenspeakpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's screenspeakpodcast@gmail.com. I'm the only person that's checking those emails right now. Believe me, I don't have some personal assistant that's answering my calls and doing all my stuff. I do it all. So you email me, I'm going to see it, and I will respond. So please go ahead and do all of that, because all of it ultimately goes towards building the community, building the podcast that is Screen Speak. So really, really appreciate that action that you are doing to make that happen. So thank you. So if you've been listening to the last few episodes, you will know that I'm continuing to go through the archive of recordings that I've captured over the course of the 2023 Cedar Rapids Independent Film Festival. This episode is no different. However, I do want to rest assured that there is new content coming, so I'm not just having the remainder of any new content coming out just be solely focused on Criff. I do have other stuff coming, which I did share in a recent post on Instagram and Facebook, so hey, looks like you got to go on there to see what those are all about. How you like that plug? How you like them apples? Horrible Matt Damon impression, but whatever, the show goes on. In this episode, I sit down and I talk with Nate Kaiser. He is a filmmaker, DP, producer, and a wrestler, all about his film The Way It Was, which was an official selection at the 2023 Cedar Rapids Independent Film Festival. So here's a synopsis about this movie so we all know what it's about. The Great Depression ravages the lives of those in the 1930s. Tough times, right? And it forces some in turn to turn to violence. Factory owner James Easton, Easton, I think I'm saying that right, or Eston, my apologies, James, fictional character, I don't think he'll mind. James must navigate life while facing the biggest crime boss in town. However, his attempts to help his community may just lead to the destruction of his family. I tried to say destruction very seriously just now, but I mean, it's destruction. It's very serious. We got to talk about it like that. So on this movie, The Way It Was, the writer, director, producer, and all crew from this movie were film students at Loras College in Dubuque, Iowa, and a majority of this film was actually shot in Potosi, Wisconsin. So that's sort of the connection and background there on the movie. And as an added bonus to this episode, I'd like to think, I've also included a link in the description that's going to let you watch the entire film free of charge. And I do want to rest assured to everybody out there, I'm no pirate. I'm not sailing the high seas of piracy, so that's not what the link is. Nate just has the movie out there so that people can watch it, because after all, this is his first film. And over the course of this conversation, we talk all about the film, of course. We talk about the grassroots efforts of getting the movie made. We talk about the shooting of it. Talk about a lot of different things, including the importance of creating a welcoming atmosphere on set, how he uses cinematography to serve the story, some upcoming projects that he has going on, and then, of course, the man himself, Nate Kaiser. We talk about him to get to know him better. So here's some more background on Nate. So Nate went to film school, as I mentioned, at Loras College in Dubuque. He also currently does a fair amount of freelance work for a place called Renovo Media, and he's even worked with them directly on a project that was directed by actor Ethan Hawke, which is a pretty huge name in acting, and just to say that you were a part of anything that he did is pretty damn cool. And that was on a project that was shot in recently in Louisville, Kentucky, I believe. And Nate also, as I mentioned, is a wrestler. He is a professional wrestler on top of being a filmmaker. And so we also touch on that bit of his life as well. And overall, guys and gals, can't just assume it's just guys, right? It's everybody. Everybody's listening to Screen Speak. Overall, I really did enjoy this conversation. I found Nate to be extremely nice and open when it came especially to his process behind the camera, and I really did sincerely appreciate the way that he was willing to be specific with how he actually accomplished certain things on a film. And I don't know why this is like a particular point that bothers me sometimes when I listen to interviews or conversations or other podcasts with filmmakers. I don't understand, and I'm talking to the filmmakers here that are giving some of these interviews or talking in these types of programs. But have you ever listened to one and someone asks them like a very specific question about like, how did you do this shot? Or how did you do this? Or how did this work out? And they kind of give you a run-of-the-mill answer that doesn't really answer specifically the heart of the question, right? Like they'll end up talking about like what the shot means and things like that, but they don't always just strictly get into this is exactly how I did this and everything I did and so on. So what I enjoyed about Nate is that he didn't do any of that. He was very open and free when he talked about the process of how he works behind the camera and also how he works very hard to take care of the crew and those around him to make sure that everybody feels heard and a part of the process. I really think this guy is going to be going places, and I do think that he has a lot to offer in the world of film, and I'm really excited just to see what the future holds for him. After listening to this, do me a favor, everybody. Look up Nate Kaiser. Look up the cast and crew of The Way It Was. I have a majority of the key players that were involved in this movie in the description below. So definitely take a look at that. Look up their Instagrams, give them a follow, and even message them too and let them know that you heard about them and their film from ScreenSpeak. That would mean the world to me. I think it would be really sweet to see that ScreenSpeak is having this kind of reach. So make that happen for me, everybody. Let's do it. I don't have anything else to say in this introduction. I just really appreciate you all listening, and I really do hope that you enjoy this conversation I have with filmmaker Nate Kaiser. Yeah, and I appreciate actually having some lighting for this conversation because last night I was telling one of the volunteers of the festival that there was two German gentlemen. I've met a lot of people during this, so that's why I'm not saying their names right off the top, but it was pouring rain outside last night. There is dim to next to no lighting in the corner that I was at, and we're talking about World War II and Germans and war, and I'm like, this is intense. Yeah, this is moody. I'm like, I guess it kind of helped, but this is much more pleasant environment.
It is very nice to see your bright and shining face this morning, Jordan.
Yes, sir. Why don't you tell the people that are listening, of course, your name, what you did on your movie, of course, the movie we're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Nate Kaiser, and I was the director of photography and producer for The Way It Was. And I co-created The Way It Was with Jake Heeline, and he was the screenwriter and director of the film.
So I know fairly well what DPs do and all that, but I always like to ask someone that is doing producer work on a film just exactly what that means, because I think sometimes people, they hear producer and they're like, so they wrote a check, or like what did they actually produce in it? So can you talk about that a little bit?
The producing world, I think, is it's like the Wild West in filmmaking. And kind of producers do different jobs overall, and I think mainly for this movie, because it is a student production, it's not like I can take the full role of a producer, like you said, where we have funding and different things to be kind of in charge of, where my job really was just regulated to making sure that the world building in the film was successful and that basically all the moving parts of the film were successful. We got everybody there on time. We got everything done. Everybody got fed on set. We got the shots we needed. We made our days. So I was kind of the ringmaster of that whole party during the film. It's a logistical ballet, if you will, because of all the moving parts that you just mentioned. And I think that's a nice thing I've actually heard from talking with several of the filmmakers at this, is the importance of organization on the set. Because you're always running against the clock. Money is always being spent basically every minute. And so time is precious, especially on an independent student-ran production, I expect. Absolutely. Time is the most valuable asset for every filmmaker. And the number one thing that I think shows how well a production can be run and kind of how successful the production is going to turn out is how well, those who are backing the project and creating it, how much time they dedicate to just doing prep work for the project and everything like that. It was Jake and I's goal to run this project as smoothly as we could, but to as high of a level as we could, even though it was a student production. I mean, we ran our sets just like you would step onto any Hollywood production.
And you've worked on other things besides this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I've worked on a couple different projects that are here at the film festival, and then I've worked on other independent shorts and feature films as well.
Comparatively to those other ones, I mean, where does this one sort of stand for you if you're looking at it like that?
This film was, I'd worked on a couple independent short films before this, so I had some examples of kind of how people in the positions that I was going to be in handled their own sets. Yeah. So I actually based a lot of how we ran this set off of people that I had seen work here in Iowa. Christian Day is a producer here in Iowa. I've worked on a lot of projects that Christian Day has been the assistant director on, and I think he is one of the most talented guys in Iowa. He runs a set like nobody's business.
How's he run it?
I mean, just like we said, doing your prep work.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're not afraid to be the guy that's on set, that somebody has to be there to keep everybody on time,
right?
And not everybody is going to be happy, but you have to be able to make the day. And Christian has just been such a great asset for me and been up to bat for me as well. So I try to base as much of my organizational skills and my prep work off of what I've seen him do.
Does that extend for you off the set, just personally, like some of the organizational traits that you are doing on the set? Do you carry some of those things just into your daily life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a weirdly obsessive issue with structuring my lifestyle, and I think it's just like if I wasn't as dedicated to like a structured lifestyle outside of film, I don't think it would convey as well when I step into the working world as well. So,
do you keep a to-do list?
Sometimes. I mean, I think for all of my work, I primarily do, but everything else that I do is really just me I'm just on a structured time zone almost every day. I'm doing the same stuff every day at the same times. So
no, I was gonna say, like, I mean, you got to be a master of multitasking to get this stuff done.
Yeah, and it's something where you just can't be afraid to this film was a massive undertaking for us, and there was a lot of moving parts, so I just had to know that you had to be ready to be the one who's in charge of all of these variables and all of these moving parts and be able to handle that under the pressure.
So let me ask you some questions specific to the film, because first off, thanks for sending me the screener this morning. I was able to watch it, so thank you for that. Not in the beautiful confines of a theater as was probably intended for watching something like this, but it actually was good to be able to see it beforehand and kind of get away from the hubbub of the festival, so I could kind of really, I quite literally watched it on my computer at home. It was just me. I didn't even, frankly, have pants on yet. Like, I just, I had a shirt and blanket wrapped around, so I'm not, like, doing anything strange like that. But watched it in total comfort. But let me get into the questions. So, first, I'm always curious, and I've been curious about this now since I've seen several shorts at this festival. There's been 51 entries total, and many of them are shorts. But the length of it, right? How does that sort of get determined? Or is it like purely just we got enough money to get this much out of it, or people's time, or story-wise you're like, this needs to be, I think it's around like 46 minutes or so, right?
Yep, absolutely. That is a great question, and it's an even weirder story because the project was designed to be episodes. This entire project was designed to be Jake and I's capstone project at Loras College. And we set out and made the personal goals of making the biggest project that Loras had ever seen. I mean, this was the biggest film that any student
like to date at the college there,
has attempted to make variables, locations, just the length of the story. I mean, at the end of production, we had 60 minutes of footage. We luckily got like at least 15 minutes cut out for our festival screeners.
So there's a director's cut out there somewhere?
there is a very trashy director's cut with an extra 15 minutes that does not need to be in there. But yeah, we got into the post-production process and said, wow, this is great. We've got 5 episodes here. And I think that's why something that Jake and I learned was, we went into the project anticipating having building episodes. So all we tried to do was hook them at the beginning and hook them at the end, and keep them wanting to come back and see it. Well, we get done making the film, and all of a sudden we're like, hey, we should submit this to some festivals. Well, you guys aren't going to get to submit to basically any festivals because you have a student project that's an hour long. It's like nobody wants to watch that. So we're like, okay, let's try to figure out a way that we can restructure this and cut down some of that time, where we ended up, figuring out, hey, let's just try to rework stuff and maybe play around with it in post-production and figure out a way to just let it live as one whole film. And it took us a while. It took us a while, a couple different renditions to try to figure out kind of how all the pieces talked to each other. But, after all, I think I'm much happier with it being one structured film instead of being in episodes, for sure.
I know for myself, I'm a movie person. That shouldn't be surprising, of course, because my podcast is centered around films, but I do appreciate short form content, TV shows and whatnot, for sure. But I agree with you that the length of something really can absolutely make a big difference on the viewer. I'm somebody that, TV shows, like, if it doesn't hook me after like the first couple episodes, I'm patient and like I know like I'll get there eventually. But I also don't really feel like I have time sometimes for that. And I like just the full kind of roller coaster that a feature can kind of put me into. And then, of course, the beautiful part is that it ends and I don't have to watch it for 9 seasons.
Exactly.
But let me ask you, so talking about the time period of this one, being around Prohibition era, 1930s, I want to say is when this is at. Where did that inspiration come from, or why the period setting?
I became like the biggest fan of Peaky Blinders on Netflix, and that
I did notice some of those hats are in there.
that was the biggest inspiration for me. And I ended up just going to Jake and being like, hey, I know how to use a camera. I know how to light. You know how to write. You know how to direct. Let's not beat around the bush and try to do jobs that we don't know how to do. Let's just work together. There's duos of guys. Let's just figure out a way that we can make this work. And luckily enough, we fell in love with the process of working together. And, we're hoping to work on our next film coming up. But in the infant stages, it definitely felt like way too much of like just a straight homage to like Peaky Blinders, and a testament to Jake knowing and like being, hey, I think we need to take the story and put it in a different place and maybe make this more of like a family driven type thing, and just let the world kind of function, and let some of the things that are some of these different locations we go to, instead of like having the entire backbone of the film be built off of like action and violence. It's just meant to be there to keep you paying attention. It's just meant to show that like, hey, this violence and these guys did just come out of anywhere, and they could just show up whenever. So I think that was something that Jake just brought to the table, was knowing that we needed to have that balance on family, community, the violence and everything within the story.
Where was it shot at?
So we primarily shot probably 80% of the film was shot in Potosi, Wisconsin.
Okay.
We had one scene that was shot in Benton, Illinois, and then we had 2 scenes, I believe, that were shot in Dubuque, Iowa. So we hit 3. We did the tri-state area, and that was one of my personal goals. Was I just wanted it to be a flex of shooting in 3 different states too.
And where do you get all the wardrobe for something like this?
We had all of the wardrobe came from Loris's theater. Jake was the president of the theater. He's been a theater head guy and done improv and done stand-up comedy, and we were really just looking for the most cost-effective way of getting this done, because at the end of the day too, it's student production. We didn't have $10,000 to throw at this thing.
Do you mind me asking what the budget was for this?
I mean, pretty much the budget was non-existent up until when we were like, okay, I knew that we were I was going to have to personally just sink some cost into this to get it to where I felt comfortable enough, like having my name on it, Where
was the money really spent at that you did put into it?
Our money was primarily spent on the lenses that we rented to film it on, which was just some really super basic like cinema lenses, like consumer level cinema lenses, and for me, the biggest thing was taking care of my cast and crew. I run a very, very tight ship on set, and it's almost a mandatory that, like, you gotta have coffee, you gotta have food. If you don't have good food for people to fuel themselves during the day, you are not gonna get the best performances. You're not gonna get the best work out of the crew.
Yeah.
So it's if they have to show up at 6 a.m. for the shoot, but they can show up at 6 a.m. and have good food and good coffee and good vibes on set. That's the important thing. So that's where we dumped a lot of our money in, was just making sure everybody was happy.
You know, those are leadership qualities, though, honestly, because I won't name specific names on, like, you know, past bosses I've had, or, you know, current ones and whatnot, but I've been fortunate that I've been under a boss where they said to me once, like, you know, yeah, on paper, like, you know, you report to me and stuff like that, but I work for you. And I was like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just said, they're like, well, look, you're not going to deliver good work unless I'm taking care of you, and you're not going to want to work for me unless we have trust in each other and kind of see the same outlook on, or not outlook, but end goal for some of these things.
Yeah.
And it was really refreshing to hear this boss kind of, like, just put that in perspective, that, like, you know, leaders ultimately want to, you know, be proud of the people that are under them, and there's a symbiotic relationship, I think, that kind of forms with some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the, you know, undertaking making a film. You as a director and as, like, one of the co-creators, it's your responsibility to see this project through to its fullest potential. And, you know, there's as you start to scale in the film industry, and I've just been lucky enough. I am so, like, I'm only 24 years old, but I've gotten the chance to work on some pretty big projects, and seeing how those people who are in, like, the later stages of their career, but are at the like, playing at that top level, knowing that when you get to sets like that, it's not always like, don't talk to the director, don't talk to the crew, don't even look at me, don't even try to try to breathe in my area. Like, that's
that pretentiousness.
Yes, that's a very real thing that exists in the film world, and I've just been lucky enough to work around people in leadership positions that think that type of thinking is totally in the past.
I definitely think that's healthy. I'll tell you this. I definitely won't name names, because I'm actually not sure, like, who this person actually was, but it was at this festival, actually. So I've met a lot of different filmmakers, and even some of the cast that's been in some of these shorts, and even some of the documentaries that have been put out here, and which has been great. Mostly glorious stuff on that. But there was one where I didn't quite get a chance to talk to this filmmaker, and I had actually gotten an email from, I guess what I thought was like, personally them, prior to, like, the festival, saying, like, hey, you know, like, I'm interested in talking, and, like, let's you know, hook up at the thing. And I was like, oh, there's that person. I should go ahead and, you know, try to, you know, just be like, hey, remember you emailed me, like, let's talk and stuff. Very interesting, because they were with two other people, and, you know, I went up to them, like, as I'm pretty sure they were leaving, and, you know, just saying, like, hey, like, did my thing. And I felt like I was talking to, like, someone from the Beatles or something, because right away, like, one of the other people that was with them almost acted like you don't talk to him kind of, like, you don't do that kind of thing. Like, they gave me a card, like, oh, you contact, like, us, like, through this, and I was like, but, like, you emailed me, like, what what's going on? And anyways, like, I was just like, it was a little off-putting, you know, for something like that. But that said, I think the majority of people would be inclined to agree with what you're saying, where you want a sense of collaboration and people that are enjoying their time together, and you want to feel that environment on the set, regardless of what the subject matter is, by the way. Exactly.
It's one of those, you know, to me, it's just a non-negotiable on set. It's like, everybody, no matter the role, is such a valuable, important piece to this puzzle. Like, it's not, the actors can't just be good, the direction can't just be good, the cinematography can't just be good. They all have to work in coercion with one another. And if one of those is off beat, it is so clear to see it play out on film. That's why films are so hard to make, and especially a good film. Like, it's so hard and so rare because there are a million different variables that have to line up perfectly for
it's a miracle anytime one really gets made, honestly.
It is, absolutely.
So I gotta ask some technical questions about this movie because there's definitely moments, of course, where there's action, and I really never, like, I guess not that I didn't appreciate action, because I'm actually always a person, especially when physical choreography and stunts are involved. I'm like, stunt people need an Oscar. Like, this is a category that goes largely unnoticed.
That is the truth.
But looking at it from such a small production like this, figuring out how you're able to pull off, believable gun shootouts, some of the effects with it. Of course, there was a couple uses where, someone's head gets blown off and, like, some of the blood splatter, like, goes on camera.
Yep.
Talk me through some of those just decisions on kind of how you're able to do that, and then even be specific if you could, and talk about, like, what programs did you guys use to pull that off?
Yeah. Being the cinematographer for the piece, it was my job to take the script that Jake has written, take his story, and figure out how to best visually tell the emotions that we're trying to get in the scene. So it's the actor's job to convey those emotions. But so many people look over the fact that camera can be doing something to help emphasize that emotion. So for us, it was something where when we approached it, I personally, like, when you go to make a film, I think it's always best to set rules for yourself, because if you don't have rules, all of a sudden it's just an ocean. You're just looking at the ocean. Filmmaking is an ocean. You have to narrow it down and find, like, the path that you're going to walk on, right? There's so many different ways that you could go.
So what are the rules that you set out for this one?
So the three big rules that I had set was, from a cinematography standpoint, I was always going to be shooting shadow side of my actors. So if they are key lit from the right-hand side of the screen, the camera is always going to be on the left-hand side of them. So if you're sitting here, you're key lit by this lamp right here to your left, right? So since the light is on the right half side of your face, I'm always going to be on the left-hand side instead, because it's just that, the way that you kind of let it kind of get that Rembrandt lighting to a face, it does help convey a little bit more of a moody environment, and we weren't trying to stray away from putting people in those emotional moments of the film. So making sure that we shot shadow side was very important. One of the other biggest things for me was when our main antagonist, Mickey, was on screen, the camera was always handheld.
Okay.
When Mickey isn't in the scene, the camera's locked off. But when the bad guys enter the scene, the camera goes handheld.
Now, why that choice? I mean, what does that do?
The purpose of doing that is to take you from this stagnant storytelling perspective, kind of this wider view as we're watching this family drama unfold, and then pushing you right next to the characters, putting you in that environment. And I just think the handheld feeling of that adds a level of tension, and it adds a level of rawness to that scene. And basically, the only time Mickey was going to be on screen was when some kind of action was happening. So it was also easier for me just to be floating around with the camera if it was handheld. But
Makes sense.
It's just little tiny things that some of the viewers would never even realize, but subliminally, it's totally affecting you.
Yeah. I admit I enjoyed the action. I mean, those are probably my most enjoyable parts of the movie, because I think where the short was effective at the most is when it kind of got down to its core of just, there's this gangster in town who basically is a controlling dick and is not letting anybody encroach on his turf, but even like no one even like practically wants to work with this guy because he's terrible. And it's basically like the townspeople going like, okay, we can't do this, like literally like we got to do something, and if that means one of us gets shot, then one of us gets shot. So I did enjoy that. Like all the townspeople are just like, you get like the bartender. There's banker guy, you know, they're just like, okay, like we'll go ahead and just go find this guy's house and take him down.
Yep.
So that was definitely interesting. I also enjoyed the vehicles as well, because obviously they're real. That's not computers.
Yep.
Where'd you get the cars?
Now, obviously, 2 of the cars are not 1930s cars.
I mean, I wouldn't know for sure because like I'm not like that person that's like that's a 1930s Oldsmobile Chevy. Like, no, I don't know.
You are the perfect set of eyes for this movie then, because obviously, like being a student production, we didn't have a large budget. Some things are only as obtainable as what you can kind of people will offer to do, like just out of their own pocket.
Right.
We were lucky enough that the city of Potosi all of a sudden became the #1 place to shoot a movie, and our movie, because they had every location and every person and every car that I needed. Every car came from Potosi. It was like the entire community of Potosi, Wisconsin said, "You want to make this movie? Well, we're going to make sure you make this movie."
Talk about that too, because that is interesting. Because so often I think we forget that where a film is shot, apart from its emphasis on the story, you're setting up shop in a community.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes I'm sure these community people, they're like, we have no idea who these people are. They're making some film. Like, what is that going to be like?
For this being our first film, I don't know if we really did it the correct way, but that was a personal goal for myself was, hey, we're going to have to live in this town for a while. These people need to like us. We need to make sure that we're taking care of their space and that we're respecting it. And we're trying to tell a story and not tell like a story we're not just trying to come in and shoot some topical movie and just use the buildings and hop out of it. We're trying to help, like the story isn't set in Potosi, but we're using the character and the buildings in that town to help tell our own stories. So, it was a big deal to me to find people who wanted to see the movie succeed as much as we wanted it to succeed. And it's a hilarious story because in the spring of my junior year at Loras, I had pitched the project to Jake. He said, okay, let's game, we'll do it, I'll write it, you shoot it, and we'll do it.
Sure.
I said, okay, well, we need to figure out a place we're going to shoot this. We needed places close enough to Dubuque that, because Loras is in Dubuque, we needed places close enough that we could commute to, but it's not like we couldn't be making hour drives for production, right? It was a thing where we were all students. It had to be a weekend warrior type thing, and we had to knock it out.
How long did this take to shoot?
We shot, I believe it was 10 total production days, so it was about 5 weekends that we ended up shooting.
And is that like pretty much like full days, like just kind of across the board for that?
Yeah, I believe we had 2 days that were probably half days, but the rest of the days were full working days. Yep.
What did you do when the like production wrapped? Like what did people do? I mean, I'm always curious, like if everyone's like, okay, that's a wrap, and someone opens champagne because everybody's happy about it just being done. I mean, was there any sort of camaraderie like that after the fact?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was awesome because there's so many unique things that had to happen for this movie even to happen. Like you said, it's a miracle. Like
I really do believe that.
We went through 3 lead roles before we landed on our lead, which turned out to be the best lead that we could have ever had. We landed on 2 female leads before we found Lauren, who ended up being Alice.
Okay.
So we did a lot of moving around of the pieces, and luckily enough, Paul, the guy who played Mickey, he also was not the first person that we had kind of picked to be our antagonist. We had actors fall through as we were inching closer and closer, and it's hilarious because Benji Miller, who played our lead James, he hopped on the project like 2 weeks before we started shooting.
Oh, really?
And he showed up, and I was going to say, I mean, like, we worked with... The film is primarily students and some, like, rough working actors, like people who are not acting really, who are just willing to take it out of the time of their day to do it, people who've acted in theater before. And I mean, everybody showed up, they knew their lines, they knew the story we were trying to tell. So I mean, it was just such a grassroots project in that sense. But yeah, after you wrap, it's after the normal working days when you're still shooting and there's still days to come, you wrap and you're like, okay, cool, we made our day, let's move on to the next one. But when we got done, it was such an awesome time to just like reflect look at what you've accomplished, you know, look around, see all your friends that are around you, and it helps you kind of make this film. And then you just look forward and you're like, oh my gosh, now there's another daunting mountain to go up of post-production. So
who worked on the visual effects for the movie?
It was all me.
It was all you?
Yep, I did all the post-production work and all of the, I mean, everything in the film is original to us. We did it all.
Now, which do you mind like mentioning like some specific programs that you used to pull off some of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I noticed, you know, like there was obviously some blood effects. I definitely noticed there was a few like green screen elements. I think like a couple like inside interior shots of the vehicle, and there was some of that, which, you know, kudos. I mean, like I wouldn't know how to pull that off myself.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious for people that are listening, like they'd probably like to know what specific stuff you used to pull that off.
Yeah, it's something where we leaned into wanting to do stuff as practically as we could, but at the end of the day, we're also trying to tell like this gangster movie, so we got to use guns, but we can't have. I mean, they're toy guns.
Good uses of graphics too. Like when like, you know, time passes, you have like a 2 weeks later thing kind of fly by, and like that you have to use visual effects for that.
Yeah, so we did all of the post production in the Adobe Creative Suite. Okay. So Premiere Pro, After Effects, Media Encoder, just all the normal stuff that comes with Premiere is what we used.
And are you pretty proficient with that, or is that just something where, you know, you're always figuring it out because there's so many things you can do with that?
I've just been forced to be the one to have to do my own editing, like just you know, while I was in college and kind of getting my feet wet. You're a one-man band most of the time, so I just had to figure it out, and it's one of those things where I know and Jake knows what we want and the emotional beats that need to be happening, and like when you go into it and you shoot it, like I already have the eye for knowing when I want to be cutting around the scene, so it's just easier if, you know, we end up editing it ourselves. So
I want to talk about you.
Yeah.
Talk about this movie and, you know, whatnot, which I actually enjoy you being very specific about some of these things that happen on there because I think it's interesting. But I want to talk about you. You know, where are you from? Let's start with that.
Well, my name is Nate Kaiser. I am originally from Rockton, Illinois.
All right.
It's about an hour and a half outside of Chicago. So no, I'm from Illinois, but I am not from Chicago. I am from a rural, small town in Illinois, about 3,000 people. And when I graduated high school, I said, you know, I think I want to figure out how to get into the movie making world. Had no idea that film schools were a thing, so ended up falling in love with Loras College. My dad was an alumni of Loras.
What's your dad do?
My dad's retired now, but he was a special ed teacher and a wrestling coach for 30 years.
And you're a wrestler yourself, right? I mean, like you got a build, so I'm like I could kind of picture it. So
grew up wrestling and playing football, and now I do. I'm a professional wrestler as well, which is more theatrical. You know, storytelling. I call it physical theater, but yes, it is.
Where do you perform that stuff at?
I train in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, at Brew City Wrestling. But I'm hoping to be on the independent circuit very soon here in the Midwest. So,
I mean, I could have a lot of questions about you on that, but I mean, can you give me some examples of places where you have put on this wrestling act? Because you said it's performative, right?
Yeah, I mean, professional. It's like, you know, if you know who John Cena and Hulk Hogan is, that's what I do.
Yeah, no, because I think that distinction is important because some people would easily be like, well, okay, there's like the rolling around on the mats with like the people that wear like I'm trying to think what it's...
There's actual collegiate wrestling, which is the guys who wear singlets, and yes, they are the baddest dudes on the planet.
I'm sure I would not want to be trapped with them.
Yes.
I also... You see it snowing outside right now?
Welcome to Iowa, ladies and gentlemen.
Good Lord, this place could not make up its mind.
We will hit all 4 seasons in one day.
No, so okay, so your dad, special ed teacher.
Yep.
What about your mom? What she do?
My mom was a PGA instructor, and she owned her own golf course. So we ran a golf course in our hometown. She owned it for 20 plus years. Ran it with my dad. He taught at the high school, and that was kind of our family gig.
Do they like the movie Caddyshack? Or is that just
they
like,
do
oh
love
God.
the movie Caddyshack.
And you know, so it sounds like early on, like you kind of got the bug for I want to pursue filmmaking, whatever shape that might take.
Absolutely.
As a career. I mean, what do they think about that?
My parents I've only been able to do all of this because of them. I mean, they were there every weekend. They drove 2 hours to come to Dubuque every weekend. They were there early as I needed to be. They brought us coffee. They brought us food. I mean, like, I am, you know, my family unit is me and my parents. It's three of us, and, you know, we have a very unique relationship where they are so game in helping me achieve my goals that they're there. They're welcome. They're happy to be there, and they're happy to help, and I think they've really enjoyed this process as well. They're both in the movie. So yeah,
who are they in the movie?
My dad is the bartender who gets brutally beat up and shot on the floor.
Yeah, I was gonna say he eats it pretty bad.
He does. He was very, very proud that he grew his hair out for that role. And my mom is actually in that scene too. She's the performer on the stage in the back of the bar, kind of swaying around.
Okay.
Yep.
Very, very cool.
Yep.
Now, I'm just curious because, you know, I don't know you well, but you've been one of the people that I've enjoyed talking with most of this thing. I'm not just saying that to you. You're a friendly guy. But you strike me as having a pretty serious work ethic about this stuff. I just kind of get that sense from you. So I'm just curious, like, how much of that is coming from your parents? I mean, how much of that's just you?
I would say 90% of it came from how my parents raised me. They are both insane individuals, so I am an insane individual.
Insane? What do you mean insane?
We have I would say they are healthy and not healthy obsessions with just staying, like, if you want to obtain this thing, or this is the path that you want to be on, do everything that you can do to make sure that you are checking the boxes on getting closer and closer to the goals that you want. And that's just something that, you know, watching them both be coaches, watching them both be, you know, members of the community that people looked to, and there were a lot of people who looked to them as the ones who could step into those leadership roles and kind of take charge. I mean, my dad was a head wrestling coach. My mom owned the golf course. She was a teacher. They're both teachers. I think I kind of, some of that has rubbed off on me, where I just love, even making this movie, it was all about how many people from Dubuque, how many young people in the film world can we grab to be a part of this with us and just bring with us on this roller coaster.
Are you locking them in physically?
Yes, we are.
You're threatening?
We're locking them in. We're squeezing the head. We're trying to to make them tap.
You know, I think that's telling though, and it's really cool to hear that you have the support system that you have in your family, and just kind of how much that means to you. And obviously, like, between teaching special ed, you know, people with special needs like that, I can relate to that. I might talk to you a little bit about that off the podcast. But yeah, I think they're already kind of like in leadership positions themselves with having to oversee stuff. So naturally, I would assume that would trickle onto you. But I think the thing I admire most about people like, you know, like yourself that are doing this is the proactiveness of it. I was telling somebody this a while ago because I've had a few people, they know I do podcasting just in my day job, and someone was asking me, like, you know, how did you like get, you know, kind of like get into this, like, you know, who showed you the ropes and blah, blah, blah. And for some reason, I thought of this quote from The Departed.
Oh, yeah?
Where Jack Nicholson's at the beginning, totally not at all the context for this, but I promise it'll make sense.
Oh, yeah.
It's a simple line. He literally just says, I'll do my bad Jack Nicholson impression of nobody gives it to you. You have to take it. And he says it like that, but honestly, there is truth in just that simple statement, in that you really got to kind of be your advocate.
Yeah.
Like, nobody really is going to just, you know, unless, I don't want to say like nobody, because I have had times in my life where I've had somebody purposely like go out of their way to be like, I want to help you.
Yep.
But it's exceptionally rare, because most people, and certainly creatives that I've met in my own journey, they are very opinionated, and they are very much motivated by their own aspirations. But you know, I don't know. I guess what I'm just trying to get at with that is that there's a drive that you have to have in yourself, and belief, and that's a really big thing. And if you don't kind of have that from either, you know, someone that's going to mentor you, or good parents, you know, friends that are seeing that, you know, fuck it, you're going to make mistakes at this, but you're going to learn. I just think there's a lot of people that could do more with their lives if they had that, or knew that they could get that. But it does start with you. I sound like I'm giving a Tony Robbins speech, but it's true.
It is, absolutely. And it's one of those things where I have gotten extremely lucky with meeting amazing mentors. Not just my parents, mentors in the film world, mentors in every facet. You know, that's just something that I crave. I crave to find someone who's done this before. I crave to find someone who is willing to help me figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, I've just met about 5 or 6 people who are willing to go up to bat for me for about anything. So it's just like, I think there's also that feeling of wanting to like give back, that kind of thing, and bring along, you know, for us it was a student thing. So it was just like, how many of our peers can we, you know, bring on this thing with us and bring on this roller coaster. So
what's coming next for you?
Right now, that is a great question. This has been, you know, this is our first film festival that the film has screened at. It's been super interesting to see it, put it in front of a crowd. It'll be awesome to see the reception that it gets today at the student screening.
Yeah, it plays at like 2:00, I think, something like that, right?
Yep. Overall, Jake and I are super happy, but we're also itching to just make another movie. We're happy that this one did what it was supposed to do, but all it was film number 1 for us. It was the first film. So the only way that we're going to get better at making movies is just to make another one. So we're in the process of kind of figuring out our creative direction for our second project, but we both loved working together.
Do you have an idea of what that second project is? I mean, I don't want to, you don't have to reveal too much if it's still early.
Yes, we do absolutely kind of know the direction we would like to head in. One of the unique things about the way it was is that, you know, this was like my baby, my project that I wanted to do. Jake came on and helped write a script that fit the story that I wanted to tell. Where now, like, you know, I want Jake to be as open and to be as creative as a writer. So this second time around, we're really looking more to let the story and the script totally organically grow from him and let him as the director explore that realm more, and then let me as a DP, as someone who is kind of taking that script and then visually turning it into something. I wanted to almost let Jake be the one to write a script, and then just kind of let me hop onto it at that point then. So it's more of his voice and his story, and then all that I can bring to the table is everything creatively. So we're both we both have this really weird thing about wanting to make time period movies. I love time period movies. I think.
You have like a favorite setting? Or a favorite time?
Honestly, I don't think so. Right now, for our second film, we are leaning in the direction of setting it in the 70s.
Hell yeah, let's go.
I've been on a super huge kick of movies like Seven, you know, detective, serial killer type,
kind of noir
movies.
type,
noir,
you know, seedy underground underbelly movies like that.
Yep. So we're trying to figure out some interesting kind of detective thriller set in the 70s story that we could invest in and hopefully film all of it here in Iowa, because we did this whole project in Iowa and we want to keep working here. We think it's awesome.
That's awesome. Now, where can people learn more just about yourself, about the way it was? You have a production company you're involved with, Cheap Heat Productions. Is that right?
Yep, Cheap Heat Productions is the production company that I run. That's my LLC. That is what you would call just the umbrella over production company for this movie, and will be for the second one. But Cheap Heat Productions is just my freelance, small production company. So
where'd you get the name?
That is a great question. I was hoping you were going to ask that.
Of course.
So Cheap Heat Productions comes from my love for professional wrestling. I mean, I fell in love with professional wrestling before I fell in love with movies.
Okay.
All filmmaking was a way for me to get into the wrestling industry. The only thing I knew was if I can learn how to visually tell a story, I should be able to verbally tell a story, right? And
have you met any wrestlers? Any of these people that you look up to, or the ones that you really like?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't met guys at the top of the mountain, but I've met a lot of really, really good mentors at the level that I'm at right now, and it's been great. But Cheap Heat
Yeah.
Those two words comes from old terminology in professional wrestling. Cheap heat. Heat is the word heat you can define as when a bad guy in professional wrestling makes the crowd boo him.
Okay.
Now, cheap heat would be cheap, exactly what it sounds like. It's an easy way for me to get heat as a bad guy. The go-to way in the 70s and 80s to get cheap heat as a bad guy was to come into a new city and directly just take a crap on all the sports teams that everybody loves. So if you were wrestling in Chicago, the first thing you were saying when you were hitting that ring was, oh my gosh, how bad are the Chicago Bears? How trashy are the White Sox? The Cubs are horrendous.
Yeah.
So by the time that, television comes back from an ad break, the crowd is already booing the heel. So that's what you call cheap heat. And for me, I was just really looking for some kind of way to marry my love for professional wrestling and filmmaking. And I was like, that's just an awesome production company name, so let's do it.
No, I think, one, I love the explanation. Two, I love that it's very methodical. And, some people, I think people forget that. There is always something to be said in the name, right?
Yep.
And sometimes, you watch independent movies, and there's kind of like the joke that you'll see 10 different production company labels before the credits actually start rolling, and some you're just kind of like,
Yep, there's a lot.
But no, I think that's really cool, and I think it's cool what you're doing. Like I said, with this is the first, not your first, but like you said, this is the first one that you have worked on with Jake, right?
No, this is my first film.
Oh, okay.
Yep, this is our number one first film. This was the first attempt at doing anything like a narrative
I think
film.
for a first, no movie is ever perfect, and there's some things, that, I maybe would have done differently a little bit, but I honestly, there's a lot that you're able to pull off well in this. And I think a lot of that is just from your guys' determination and wanting to tell an entertaining story. And I was entertained, not just saying that. So,
well, that's good. We appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I'd love to be able to connect with you guys down the road whenever you guys have another project kind of lined up and stuff. That's part of the joys of this festival, is getting to meet people like yourself and understanding that we're not alone in this. I think it's definitely a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something where, Jake especially wanted me to make sure that everybody knew, if there's anybody listening that was a part of the project, that he expresses the most gratitude for everyone, because this project would not have been possible without the help of so many awesome people in the Dubuque, Potosi, and Benton community. And I think it's a perfect example of what is obtainable as a student filmmaker in Iowa. And it really does show that, it doesn't take much to meet people in this state and to make good movies. And I think, just the biggest thing that confronts Iowa film right now is that everybody in Iowa is just spread out in Iowa.
Yeah.
And not everyone knows that everyone exists. And, figuring out a way that we can bring people together like that. There's a lot of really good companies that are doing that. Renovo Media in Clear Lake, they're a company that I've worked for. They were the company that helped me get booked on my first feature film. They are one of the best, along with Produce Iowa and everybody who just wants filmmakers in Iowa to know where they can get their hands on assets, where they can get their hands on funding, where they can rent gear, where they can meet actors, where they can learn about the industry.
Well, just get jobs, it sounds like, too.
Yeah.
It sounds like they put out, hey, we need people for this, and that.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where there are so many good people here in Iowa, and I think, give it a couple years, but I do think that we're going to get to see some really cool films get made.
Got to talk about this, and then I think we'll start wrapping this up here, because I don't want to take away your whole time at the festival.
You're fine.
Some of the cliche questions that you ask any person that loves movies, but just tell me some of your favorite movies, the ones that really hit you.
Okay, so favorite director, Tarantino, by far. Favorite movie, Reservoir Dogs.
Okay.
Not going to change. It's my favorite movie. It impacted me the most. I watched it. I said, wow, this is different. Movies are different. Right now, I am on a massive Michael Mann kick.
God, I love Michael Mann.
I just watched the made-for-TV movie, The Jericho Mile, like this past week, and oh my gosh, if you haven't seen The Jericho Mile,
I have not.
Please go and watch it.
When did he make that?
I believe it was made in '79.
Okay.
It's my third favorite prison movie next to Shawshank and Green Mile, which I think are like
a good prison movie.
the best prison movies. So I would definitely tell everybody to check that out. But I mean, like, you know, for me, I think my taste, especially right now, is changing. You know, I didn't grow up knowing films. I'm 24 now, and now I'm meeting people who are introducing me to like the classic films. So I'm almost thankful that I didn't watch some of these movies when I was younger, and now I'm just getting to experience them for the first time, because I think, like, you know, directors like P.T. Anderson and Tarantino and Mann and just, you know, guys who aren't afraid to tell their story.
Well, and they have a very distinct vision. I mean, without sounding pretentious, because I don't like some of the pretentiousness that comes with the world of film.
Yeah.
But they're auteurs. I mean, they are.
Yep.
Like, you watch any one of their movies, it's unmistakably theirs.
Yep.
And you sometimes can't even almost put it in the words what it is. With Michael Mann, though, because I'm a Mann fan.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I will say he has one of the most realistic sensibilities about himself as a filmmaker.
Oh,
like
so
movies good. Like you know, Heat and Public Enemies, you know, even like Collateral, even the Miami Vice movie, which I'm not going to say it's not one of his greatest.
Yep.
But his camera work and just kind of the raw, organic vibe that he has developed over his career is like, I look forward to watching a movie, even if I'm like, I might be like, you know, either bored by the story or like something's not working, but like just visually, I'm like, this is like raw and gritty, and there's very few people I think that can pull it off as well as he does.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something where, I mean, like, I just thought about it too. I can't leave out like Scorsese.
Oh,
is
sure.
Just, you know, the thing that is interesting is trying to reflect on this question right now as a 24-year-old who's like just trying to get started in this industry is like, what are you trying to say? Mm-hmm. Every filmmaker gets asked, you know, like, at the end of the day, what are you trying to say with your films? And for me, I just love movies that are big. I love movies that can help you escape and put you into this different world. And these characters, maybe they are realistic. Maybe they are, you know, like Tarantino does. Maybe they're throwing just the everyday talk that you know you have with your friends. They're throwing it at you right in your face, and they're not afraid to do that. And, you know, I think it's if there's any good way to put a cap on it, I love Heat, and my go-to quote is it's not the end of the road that's the best. For me, the action is the juice. The action is the juice. So
R.I.P. Tom Sizemore, man.
Absolutely. For me, the action is the juice, and it's just making the movies that are great. So I mean, we love just being in the element and making it happen. So we're hoping to just keep doing it.
No, that's awesome. Sorry, you're talking about Heat, so I'm like, it's like, God, I want to keep talking about this. But did you read Heat 2?
I have not. I actually just found out that I just found out that it existed.
Okay.
And I am definitely going to be reading it very soon.
Definitely read it. It's one of the few times I've like pre-ordered a book because I got hyped, and I have read it all. I actually do have a podcast on it, so if you want to go back in my library and take a look at it, I talk about the 4K restoration of Heat, and then also Heat 2, so it's kind of a dual podcast, if you will.
Cool.
But definitely, I'm talking about this because I put a lot of research into that episode.
You're good. Yeah.
So if you're a Heat fan and you want to like go down the deep end on that, that's a great one to listen to. But
awesome.
I'll say keep an eye out for that one, not just the book, because Mann supposedly is going to be developing it. I think, if you read the book, I honestly think it's almost a little too big for one movie. Okay. I think it actually might be better served as like a mini series or something like that. But who knows? I know I'm excited for his next project, which is the one with Adam Driver, the Enzo Ferrari biopic.
Yep.
Don't know jack about cars, but I know Adam Driver's really good, and I know Michael Mann. Yeah, it's one of those people. Like it doesn't matter what his name's attached to. Like I don't give a shit. Like I see it. I'm there.
Exactly.
But it's really been a pleasure talking with you, man. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been just a great experience for us, and we're happy that more people are going to get to see the movie and see what you can do here in Iowa as a filmmaker.
Yes, absolutely. All right, well, on that note, I will end this and just say support Iowa-based films, honestly, because even for a guy like myself that's been a movie geek my whole life, the doors are opening, even at this festival, kind of figuring out the opportunities that I have been, I guess I'll kind of say ignorant to, because I like a lot of people, I get caught up in my day-to-day and the other outside things, and I forget some of the things that are going on out there. But I really encourage people out there, specifically in the Iowa area, if you're interested, know that there are others. You're not alone on this. And honestly, the way it's going to get done is like going back to Jack Nicholson. But you gotta, if you want it, you gotta take it. Nobody's likely going to show you how to do this. You just got to do it.
That is the hardcore truth. You just got to keep making movies and remember that the action is the juice, man. You just got to keep making
own the
movies.
mistakes too. I think some people get so freaking self-critical, like when like they screw up on something or like they're embarrassed about something they put out. I'm like, don't be. One of the best pieces of advice I was ever given as a young guy was, it's only weird if you make it weird.
Yep.
It's all about your perspective and how you kind of look at it, and you're growing, so the hell with it. The hell with the naysayers. Do it because you love it. That's the thing at the end of the day. So
absolutely.
That is all I have to say. But thank you very much for talking with me, and definitely check out The Way It Was.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jordan. Appreciate it.